Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about why the passing of Benny from Comicstorian is a very important event for the Dungeons and Dragons community. All right. Okay, let's talk about it. All right, so first of all, who's Benny from Comicstorian? Benny from Comicstorian was a really important person. What he did was he actually fundamentally changed how Americans viewed comic books. So, before Benny from Comicstorian came along, if you wanted to read a comic book series, you had to buy the comic book, and then you had to sit down and read the comic book, and then you had to you really couldn't throw it away because people would get upset. They'd be like, "Why aren't you boarding and bagging those comics?" And if you like if you carry a comic book around today without a board and a bag, you're going to hear about it, right? So you had to pay full retail for a comic book, physically buy it, physically read it, and you had to keep it like in very good shape, physical shape. It had to be bagged and boarded, or you would be harassed on the streets. It was part of comic book culture. Well, Benny changed that, and what he did was he came along and he was like, I'm going to take the comic books and I'm going to clip them together, and I'm going to make a visual story out of comic books, and I'm going to give it to everybody for free. All right. And he fundamentally changed how comics were viewed, and I'm convinced more comics have been watched through Benny of Comicstorian's YouTube channel than were ever read by Marvel or DC fans. I believe Benny from Comicstorian fundamentally changed comic book story consumption forever for the better, right? So he was an incredibly important man. Now, why are we talking about him on the Dungeons & Dragons channel, right? Well, let's get into it. Recently, he died. He died at 40 years old, okay? And when he died, I knew he was younger than me. I knew he was 10 to 20 years younger than me. And so immediately I was like, oh, I know why he died. And I was wrong. I didn't know why he died. And it took a little while to come out, but basically from what I know, he died in a car accident that was not his fault and where no one else was injured, right? So he had essentially a tragic accidental death, okay? And this is massively important to the Dungeons & Dragons community. Why is it important to the Dungeons & Dragons community? Well, when Benny from Comicstorian when Benny from Comicstorian died, the Dungeons & Dragons community, in my humble opinion, lost something fundamentally important to the future of Dungeons & Dragons. What is that? Well, Benny did not get a chance to utterly transform the way Dragon Master character stories are consumed. Right now, just like comic book stories were trapped in physical books and could not be consumed for free by the masses, Dragon Master character stories are also trapped. They're trapped on physical character sheets throughout America, and there's no way to discern which tables Dragon Master stories need to be told to the world in this spectacularly exciting audio visual spectacle that only Benny from Comicstorian was able to produce. Absolutely no one on the planet does what Benny did. There's a few people who do similar things, but no one was able to do what Benny did. He was the best there ever was. And frankly, I don't think there's really anyone who really even remotely approaches what he does. I think there's a guy that does Comics Explained. I really never watched his channel because as long as Benny was alive, there was zero reason to watch Comics Explained, right? And because Comics Explained, I think he does a similar thing, but it's not the same, and it really didn't unlock these stories the way Benny did. It was different, right? better, and it was transformative. It was transformative. It was transformative to the people who got to see these incredible stories in this incredible way, and frankly, a way that was better than if you read them, right? And so that's the point is, and you're like, well, Scott, why do you think Benny would have done that? Well, he was on a railroad to doing it. How? Well, Benny from Comicstorian loved comic books. Comic books are dying, right? There's almost no good comic books being written today. And so Benny knew that in order to tell good stories, you needed good source material. There's no good source material now. The DC movies are utter garbage. The Marvel movies, and I'm so sorry to say this, but we've reached the point. They're garbage too, right? Like Avengers Endgame, the whole thing should have shut down. Now they're just telling retread trash with stories, literally making movies with characters that they just showed the death of. Like, it's just utter garbage, right? And those movies have ruined the comic books. So Benny had switched over to anime, right? But he wasn't getting a lot of traction with his anime channel, and he didn't have the passion and the love for it the way he did for comic books. And so you could tell he wasn't really like settled there. But our Dragon Master stories had the same energy, the same trapped nature as comic books, and they were paper based, right? And American based, in that American stories, American energy, and Benny was perfectly positioned to begin bringing the best and the most important Dragon Master stories to the world in an audiovisual spectacle the way he had pioneered, right? And I think it would have transformed how Dragon Master stories are consumed, because right now they are utterly trapped in actual plays, which are abominably horrible, right? And if Benny had remained alive, I think within 2-3 years he would have switched to doing Dragon Master stories, and he would have brought that audiovisual spectacle with the energy that only Benny from Comicstorians had. So when he passed, we lost our future of unlocking Dragon Master characters in the way that Benny could, right? And what's even worse is Benny had no protege, right? He was a shogun. He never trained another sword master, right? And so there was literally no one who could pick up the ball to do what he did. And so when Benny from Comicstorian died, our ability to unlock Dragon Master stories in ways that are compelling and real in these audiovisual spectacles that only Benny could produce died with him. And that is incredibly sad. And I didn't get a chance to say this before, and I don't want to end this video without saying it. My condolences to everyone who loved Benny from Comicstorian. I loved Benny from Comicstorian. I weep for his passing. I am really upset that he was taken from this world too soon. And I'm really hoping that he will, that he'll be remembered in the right way by the Dungeons & Dragons community, even though he never got a chance to serve the Dungeons & Dragons community in the way that I think he was on trajectory to do. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. I think I got all the details right on how he passed, which was important to me to learn because I was really concerned for him, and I wanted to know that his passing was I wanted to know how he passed, right? And I think if somebody we love passes, I think we want to know. I think people want to know, right? And so I just gave you my information on what was correct, right? If anybody has any additional information on it or anything that corrects anything that I didn't get right, Benny deserves to have that, corrected. So please, just gave you my opinion. Actually, I gave you my version of what I knew, which had been reported. And so if there's any updates or anything I missed, please let us know. Thank you very much for letting me share my love of Benny Comicstorian with you and my lament for what the D&D community, in my humble opinion, is lost. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. what's important is when I hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider like, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.